The 2021-2022 MLB offseason is basically over. Almost every big-time free agent has signed, excluding Michael Conforto. I thought, why not grade every MLB team's offseason on an A to F scale? So without further ado, we're not even going to cue the intro. Let's get straight into it. So starting things off with the Atlanta Braves, I think they had the best offseason of any MLB team. I'm giving them an A+. Yes, the Braves did not bring back Freddie Freeman, but they acquired a superstar first baseman in Matt Olson, and they dramatically upgraded the bullpen with Kenley, Jansen, Colin, McHugh, and they brought back Kirby, Yates, who was the MLB saves leader in 2019. And on top of that, they brought back postseason hero Eddie Rosario on a fantastic 2-year deal. I think the Braves look super scary and have a good chance to possibly repeat. Up next, we got the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm giving them a B+. They dramatically upgraded the offense with Kyle Schwarber and Nicholas Castellanos. Yes, I know the defense is going to be terrible, but I also like what they did in the bullpen. They lost Archie Bradley and Hector Neris, but brought in Corey Knebel, Brad Hand, and Yuri's Familia. The Phillies bullpen has been the league's worst the last 2 years, and I think it's going to be much better in 2022. Third up on the list, we had the New York Mets, and I'm giving them an A. Obviously, Max Scherzer was the biggest signing for the Mets. I love that deal, but they also brought in Chris Bassett for the rotation. He's really good. Then they upgraded the outfield with Starlin Marte and Marcana. And they also brought in Eduardo Escobar and Adam Ottavino for the bullpen. They upgraded the team in multiple facets, and if this team can stay healthy and can produce like they're supposed to, they can be really scary next season. Fourth up on the list is the Miami Marlins. The Marlins desperately need an offense to combat with that young pitching, and they upgraded a lot. They brought in big-time bats Avisel Garcia and Jorge Soler for the outfield. They also acquired Joey Wendell from the Rays and Jacob Stallings from the Pirates, who's a phenomenal defensive and solid hitting catcher. I would have liked for them to upgrade the bullpen a little bit, but I still really like what they did this offseason. I'm going to give them a B. And wrapping up the NL East, we had the Washington Nationals. They surprisingly brought in Nelson Cruz. I still can't wrap my head around that signing. They also brought in Cesar Hernández. But other than that, they really didn't do too much. They did bring back Sean Doolittle. So with that, I'm going to give them a D because they really didn't upgrade the team that much. Moving on over to the NL Central, we all know how good the Milwaukee Brewers pitching staff is, the bullpen and rotation, but they really need to upgrade the offense, and they didn't do that. Yeah, they signed Andrew McCutchen, and yeah, they acquired Hunter Renfroe, but that wasn't the move I was talking about. I was really expecting a big-time bat for them, and because they didn't do that, I'm giving them a D. I thought the Milwaukee Brewers had a bad offseason, but the St. Louis Cardinals had even a worse one. This team made the wild card last year thanks to a 17-game win streak in September, and what they do this offseason, signed Corey Dickerson and Steven Matz. And don't get me wrong, I like the Steven Matz move a lot, and Corey Dickerson's an average MLB outfielder, but they needed more in that rotation, and they need the big bat in that lineup. I thought Trevor Story would have been the perfect fit, so for that, I'm giving them a D-. The Brewers had a bad offseason, the Cardinals had a horrific offseason, but nothing compares to what the Cincinnati Reds do. They're our first F on this list. They lost Nicholas Castellanos, they traded Jesse Winker, Sonny Gray, Eugenio Suarez, and I understand if you're on the full rebuild mode why you're doing that, but what they didn't do is trade Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle. Those two starting pitchers are going to give you the biggest return out of anyone on your team, and reports are saying they're not going to be traded. That's just terrible ownership by the Cincinnati Reds. Finally, in some bright news in the NL Central, I think the Chicago Cubs had a really good offseason. I'm giving them a B+. I said it in the middle of last season. I don't think the Cubs are in a rebuild. I think they're in a retool, and they just proved my point this offseason. They got an ace-like pitcher in Marcus Stroman, a huge international signing in Seiya Suzuki, but I like what they did with Jonathan VR. He's extremely versatile. Upgrade the bullpen with Michael Givens, the rotation with Wade Miley, and got a shortstop in Andrelton Simmons. They upgraded in all three facets, the bullpen, the rotation, the offense with proven and possibly all-star caliber players. So with that, I'm going to give them a B+. And last but not least in the NL Central, we have the Pittsburgh Pirates. Unlike some teams on this list that we'll talk about later, the Pirates actually made some major league signings. Not saying they're good, but they showed a little effort. Now into the NL West, starting off with the San Francisco Giants. They lost Kevin Gausman, so they brought in Carlos Rodon. They also brought back Alex Wood, Anthony DeSclafani, and brought in Alex Cobb, an absolute great signing for them. And on the offensive side of the ball, they re-signed Brandon Bell and brought in Jock Peterson for the outfield. I really like what the Giants did this offseason. Not sure they're going to win 107 games again, but I'm going to give them an A-. Speaking of really good off seasons, the Los Angeles Dodgers had a fantastic one. Yeah, they lost Corey Seager, but they signed Freddie Freeman, and they also brought back a lot of their own big free agents. However, they did lose Kenley, Jansen, and Joe Kelly, two big pieces in that bullpen, and they didn't really upgrade that or make up for those losses, so I can't give them an A+. Next up, we got the San Diego Padres. This is the definition of a mediocre offseason. They got Luke Voit, Jorge Alfaro, and Luis Garcia. They got a bunch of bad contracts tied up that I was hoping they would get rid of, but they did get slightly better, so I'm going to give them a C-. I don't think anyone expected the Colorado Rockies to make a big splash this offseason, but they did. They signed Chris Bryant, but they also made some other small moves I like in Jose Iglesias, Alex Colomé, and Chad Kuhl. I mean, their offseason wasn't great, but I respect what they're doing in the NL West. It's a powerhouse division, but they're still trying to contend and sign players, so I'm giving them a C+. And wrapping it up, we had the Arizona Diamondbacks. They brought in Mark Melancon, Ian Kenley, and Zach Davies, and it's really obvious what they're trying to do. Sign these guys to one-year deals, and hopefully they have a good first few months of the season, then trade them at the deadline for prospects. Now on to the American League. Granted, the Rays didn't lose much this offseason, but they also didn't add much. They brought in Corey Kluber and Brooks Raley. That's a deal I love. Tampa Bay is going to make Raley an elite relief pitcher this season. But I would have liked for them to upgrade the rotation with a true veteran, not an injury-prone guy like Kluber. And I also thought they could have used the bat in the lineup. They won 100 games last year, and I know they're a small market team, but I thought they should have done more. Thank God the Red Sox got Trevor Story, because if they didn't, this offseason would have been terrible for them. I mean, none of the guys listed above in the rotation are really anything special to me. Rich Hill's the best one on this list, and he's in his early 40s, so what can we expect from him next year? Like the signing of Jake Diekman, but I thought the bullpen should have been more of a priority. Thank God they got Trevor Story, so with all that being said, I got them as a B-. Up next, we got the New York Yankees. They're getting Freeman, they're getting Olson, they're getting Cesar, Correa, all those guys. They ended up getting none of them. The Yankees finally got, though, legit shortstop, and IKF is really solid defensively, and Josh Donaldson can still rate, but he is injury-prone at age 37. I don't think this team is better than last year's. They might even be slightly worse, and they also didn't extend Aaron Judge, which I thought was the #1 priority for them this offseason, so I'm giving them a C-. Toronto Blue Jays won 91 games last season and still missed the playoffs, and they made sure that would not happen again this year. I really like the acquisition of Matt Chapman, bringing in Kevin Gausman, signing Yusei Kikuchi, and also Yimi Garcia for the bullpen. However, the biggest problem for them last season was the bullpen. I thought they needed a true late-inning dominant reliever. They didn't acquire one, so with that, I'm giving them an A-. And wrapping up the AL East, we had the Baltimore Orioles. I know they're in a huge rebuild, but I thought they'd be a little bit more competitive this season. They only made 2 all-season signings, so I'm giving them an F. Shifting on over to the AL Central, the White Sox had a solid offseason. Nothing spectacular, but they brought in Josh Harrison for second base, Kendall Graveman and Joe Kelly for an already stacked bullpen. I had love for them to add a corner outfielder. Maybe Michael Conforto is that guy, and possibly a starting pitcher in the back end of the rotation, but either way, I like what they did. There is no excuse for the Cleveland Guardians to spend $0 in free agency. It's absolutely pathetic. They're easily getting an F. It's so disappointing because this team has talent. You know who did spend money, though? The Detroit Tigers, and I really like what they did this offseason. I'm not huge on Javi Baez, but their shortstop ranks were dead last offensively in baseball last year, and he's definitely an upgrade. For the rotation, they brought in Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Pineda, 2 solid veteran pitchers. And then for the bullpen, steal of the offseason, Andrew Chafin. Love that signing. I'm giving them a B+. The Kansas City Royals also made a few moves. I love seeing Zach Greinke go back to Kansas City, going back to where he all started, but he isn't that great of a pitcher, and $13 million was a lot of money for me. And they acquired Amir Garrett, but he was terrible last year. The Royals are an upcoming team. I thought they'd make a lot more moves this offseason, so I'm giving them a D grade. Last but not least, and maybe the most shocking team this offseason, the Minnesota Twins, man. Let's talk about them. I mean, who saw this coming? They signed Carlos Correa, who's the biggest free agent this offseason. They also acquired Sonny Gray from the Reds and brought in Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez in a trade with the Yankees. They saved $50 million in the Josh Donaldson trade and went out and got Correa. I really like what they did this offseason, so I'm giving them an A. Speaking of Carlos Correa, now onto the AL West, the Houston Astros lost Correa, and they didn't do much this offseason. They re-signed Justin Verlander and brought in Hector Neris from the Phillies. I like both of those deals, and I knew Carlos Correa was never going back to Houston, and I'm sure they didn't either, but this team is still super talented. They could have done a little bit more, so I'm giving them a C-. The Seattle Mariners haven't made the playoffs in 20 years, and I really think 2022 could end that drought, especially with what they did this offseason. Seattle's bullpen was 4th in the league last year in ERA, so that was fine. They didn't do anything there, so they got Robbie Ray for the rotation. He won the Cy Young Award last year, and the biggest problem was the offense, and they upgraded that dramatically. They acquired Adam Frazier from the Padres. He was an all-star last year. And then from the Reds, they got Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez, 2 power bats who upgrade that lineup tremendously. Out of all 30 MLB teams, the Oakland Athletics were by far the hardest for me to scale just because I don't know what to think. On one hand, they went into full rebuild mode, and I don't mind what they did, and I kind of like the return they got in most of their trades for Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, to name a few. But on the other hand, I'm extremely torn to see this core fall apart with all those trades, and Sean Manaea and Frankie Montes are the next 2 to go. A C grade is the average for this scale, so that's what I'm going to give them, but let me know down below what you would give them because I'm truly torn. For years now, the Los Angeles Angels' biggest problem has been the rotation and bullpen, and they did a lot this offseason to address that. They brought in Noah Syndergaard, also Michael Lorenzen from the Reds, and then for the bullpen, they re-signed closer Rosario Iglesias, and then they brought in Ryan Tepera and Archie Bradley, and that bullpen is much, much better. If Trout, Ohtani, and Rendon can all stay healthy this year with all those offseason moves, I think the Angels can finally make the playoffs for the first time since 2014. And last but not least, in a perfect way to end the video, the Texas Rangers spent over $500 million in free agency this offseason. They by far had the best middle infield with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. They upgraded the catcher position with Mitch Garver. They also brought in utility Brad Miller, and then they upgraded the rotation with John Gray from Colorado. Don't get me wrong, this team still has a lot of holes, but I really like what they did. The future is bright in Texas, and I'm going to give them an A for what they did this offseason. And that's going to wrap up the video, guys. Grading all 30 MLB teams 2021-2022 offseason. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree with your favorite team's ranking or any of the other MLB teams I talked about. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We're less than 100 subs away from 2,000. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, though. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.